Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing good.
Good. Happy Thursday, everybody. Tesla is up 2% at $180 per share. Overall markets are down. Dow Jones down zero point 0.8, Nasdaq down zero point 0.7, S&P down zero point 0.3. Russell 2000, the small cap index, is up 1%. What is going on with big tech today? Microsoft is down 3%, Nvidia down 1.4, Google 2, Meta 1.3, Amazon down 1.5. Interesting. Salesforce down 21%. Coal's down 23%. Big movements today in the market. Oil down as well. Yield curve is down 7, 8 basis points across the curve. Oil down 2%. What's going on, Omar? Is the economy going downhill here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Salesforce had a bad earnings print or something yesterday.
Yeah, I think they did. I caught an interview. It sounded like investors are taking a closer look at these big investments that big tech
Yeah.
companies are doing. Maybe it's about time.
I mean, these big tech names have come to be viewed as sort of blue chips in the market. They're known for consistent growth, and they tend to have pretty strong moats that shield them from competition long term. So they've really become an oversized part of the market and an oversized part of trading volume. And a lot of people have kind of sounded the alarm on that, the sort of overwhelming concentration. And people probably don't look too deeply into them, right? They don't question their Googles and their Amazons and their Salesforces of the world. They kind of just expect things to just keep growing.
Uzi.
I also read a thread that the market is just saturated with these plays, the SaaS plays, and so over time they expect the forward revenues to decrease. But I'm not a finance major, so that's just my 2 cents.
This
Yeah,
is the
this is
worst day for Salesforce stock in 20 years.
yeah, yeah, something like that since 2008. I heard. Man, this is
2004, actually.
oh wow, is it really? I
Yeah,
guess
it
it's
made
getting
it through
worse and worse
2008.
throughout the day.
Yeah, this
Oh
is
yeah,
worse than the financial crisis for them.
interesting. Well, if anybody knows exactly why the stock is down 20%, more than 20% Salesforce, you're welcome to request to speak and share your insight with us. Um, I just sent my notes on the AMD earnings call to patrons. I guess next I should probably do Salesforce. This is a major, major drop. Let's see. Salesforce sales shares plunged nearly 11% extended hours. So this is after hours yesterday. Trading on Wednesday after enterprise software giant reported fiscal first quarter results and guidance that missed estimates. For the period ending April 30th, Salesforce earned, etc., etc. Let's see. I'm going to skim through this. Revenue from services was 2.1 billion. Consensus analysts estimate that Salesforce would earn $2.37 per share on 9.15 billion. So they beat on the adjusted earnings per share. They almost met on revenue. So it must be some sort of a comment or something. Company kept
Yeah.
its full year outlook, however, as it sees sales for fiscal 2025 between 37.7 billion and 38 billion below the 38.05 billion estimate. I mean, that's like slightly below.
Yeah, this is
Hmm.
crazy. It
Yeah.
says revenue for the period increased 11% to 9.13 billion, which was just shy of 9.17 expected. Clearly that's clearly not it. It's almost there. Doesn't seem like they missed that badly. So, what is really spooking investors here?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Maybe it's just a sentiment shift across the market. Do you think that's possible?
I'm thinking maybe I should buy some. I don't know.
I don't know about that. That's ambitious. Let's do a quick overview of the stock real quick. Let's see. Market cap $209 billion, PE ratio of 51, dividend yield of 0.7%. It's back to 1 year ago prices. So the stock surged from October 2023 to March 2024 by 62%. It kind of gave all that back since then. Hasn't really moved much. It's back to February 2020 prices. Interesting. Let's see what else we can kind of gain at first look here. Revenues are growing pretty consistently year over year. Operating expenses are flat from a year ago. Operating expenses up 4.8%, revenue up 11%. The January quarter, though. Let's look at the annual results here. I mean, the PE ratio is still very high, don't you think? At 51.
Yeah.
So when the sentiment shifts across the macro, companies with high PE ratios are going to get hit more, obviously. So, Uzi?
I'm looking at the thread. I posted it in the chat. The first thing he said was that with Salesforce, you have like a data entry and configuration problem, and then with artificial intelligence, that
What thread is this?
from Ram Aludullah.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about somebody else's opinion. We want to look at the facts and the numbers and gain our own insight and conclusions. All right. I don't know who that person is.
Yeah, it looks like it's really the guidance that scared the market on this one. They said it was the lowest ever growth forecast that they've seen. So I think maybe people are just looking at this and thinking, okay, this is a high PE tech stock. We were expecting it to grow. If it's not going to be growing that fast, then why do we really want to participate in watching this thing maybe continue to decline when they're not really doing anything with AI? And there's these other AI stocks that are just running, and these guys are looking a little bit behind the times, kind of the last generation of tech companies.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. The outlook is heightening investors' fears over Salesforce's sliding sales growth in the past year as the company has turned its attention to bolstering profit. Management has touted the potential for artificial intelligence-oriented software and features to boost revenue. The company has also increased buybacks and initiated a dividend in an attempt to keep Wall Street happy. Well, that's not good if they were buying back stock and then the stock plunged 20%. That kind of sucks.
Bad management.
Yeah. To keep Wall Street happy, that's what you end up with. NVIDIA, they just had their biggest buyback quarter ever at all-time highs.
Yikes.
Wow. Yeah.
And they knew that growth was slowing, so they should have been able to predict the impact on the market and known that the shares weren't a good value at the time. So it's just a really bad idea.
Way too often management teams get surprised by Wall Street reaction or the stock price reaction to their earnings. Yeah, looks like they started buying back stock in the second half of 2022, and then they've been buying back about $2 billion a quarter for the last year. Interesting. If anybody in the audience knows Salesforce deeply, please request to speak and share your insights.
When I think of
Quote, I would
Salesforce,
question.
I just think about really outdated, ugly software. The other thing they have is Slack. I believe they own Slack, which is a major app that people use. but they recently had a major faux pas where people got the impression that they were going to be training an AI model on their Slack chats. And obviously, this is extremely personal information about your company. The last thing you want to hear is that someone's training an AI model based on your company's internal data. So a lot of people have left Slack as a result, and I think that could have an impact on earnings potentially. I don't know what the impact of Slack is on their overall business.
Salesforce's outlook weighed on the performance of the software sector on Thursday, with Oracle, ServiceNow, SAP, and others also declining. Quote, I would question if a lot of the focus by CIOs on AI is coming at the expense of expansions at Salesforce, said Rishi Jalore, an analyst at RBC Capital Markets. That's a good question. I actually heard the same question asked, I think on an NBC interview. And the question was, companies that are allocating money to buy these GPUs at high prices. Some companies are spending tens of billions of dollars. Some companies are spending billions of dollars. Where is that money coming from, right? And I guess Tesla spent $1 billion in Q1. Tesla's spending isn't nearly as high as other, big tech companies. But that money has to come from somewhere. Obviously, that investment has to come from somewhere, right? So, Wessex.
Hey guys, what's happening? You said or asked if anybody knew Salesforce. My company has been using Salesforce for about the last 15 years. And
Your connection is really bad, so we're going to go to Uzi. Uzi, go ahead.
From my experience as a data analyst, I'm on Microsoft Fabric. And the question is will not dashboards, I don't think, but reporting be replaced by AI? And I think that's definitely going to be the case. I think dashboards require more infrastructure, but reporting is something that you can ask the Copilot, in my case, to describe the scenario. It's not that good yet, but eventually it will take my job. So I'm not bugging yet, but I do think I don't know the case specifically with Salesforce and how good Einstein AI is, but I don't think it's the lead player, I'd say.
Here's another article from the Bloomberg. Here's another paragraph from the Bloomberg article. Recent results by Workday and UiPath showed similar pessimism. For software companies, the malaise is broad, not Salesforce specific, and we don't see evidence of a second half recovery, wrote an analyst at UBS after the results. Yeah. AI-oriented hardware and software investments are likely to come at the expense of traditional giants like Salesforce, said another analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Well, why didn't you say these things before the earnings? Omar, are you a buyer of Salesforce here?
No. I mean, I kind of thought about it. I said, okay, sometimes when you got a big sell off like this, the market has a little bit of an overreaction. It can bump a little bit. So could potentially be a good short term trade. But then as we talked about it more, I said it's fundamentally a shitty company. So buying the dip only works if it's actually a great company. And, I could be wrong about them, but my impression of their products is that it's not leading edge anymore. And, I'll keep following them, but I think the market is reacting this way for a reason. They can really see what the outlook of this business is, and they can see the guidance, and they're not seeing the catalyst for it to turn around and return to growth, and I'm not either.
Heard it here first, guys. He considered buying the dip, and then after our discussions here, he changed his mind. So the discussions here are informative and material. There you go. Wessex, do you want to try again? Your connection kind of got bugged out a little bit.
yeah, I'm sorry for whatever reason. I wasn't on Wi-Fi. Am I good now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. First of all, I agree with Uzi. Salesforce, if people don't know it, Salesforce is kind of an old term is contact management system. So you'll have all your contacts in there. You'll have all your opportunities in there. You'll have all they call them accounts, which are companies. And so it's kind of it ran my company's business. It was the core of our business, and it was a great product. And one of the cool things about Salesforce at the time that I think is really relevant, particularly with UiPath, is you could configure your business without writing code, meaning you could create workflows and you could make it do some pretty cool things without having to actually know how to write code. You could go further being if you could write Salesforce code. So that was really neat. But the analytics, to Uzi's point, really wouldn't be needed anymore. So that's a portion of the business that you don't want to pay for. And I'll tell you, as a Salesforce customer, we were paying about $100 per license per month since we started with them about 15 years ago. And they were slowly reducing the amount of the software performed less and less over time. And so you really needed to pay more to be able to take advantage of um, features that you used to have in the past. So it was never, I don't know, it really wasn't a great, we weren't particularly happy with the company, if you will, in the way that they worked with customers. But when it comes to UiPath, just kind of going on a related tangent there, UiPath, from what I could tell, also had a kind of configurable workflow type of system. I looked at them and as we compared them to Salesforce, and Kathy Woods invested in them pretty heavily, but it looked like a Microsoft DOS type of interface. It was really antiquated. I couldn't even imagine why UiPath would be a product people would consider. We didn't. I'm sure there's some stuff in there we missed, but it's just a related point. But yeah, I think Salesforce's days are behind them, and they did have this AI product called Einstein. We never took advantage of that, but basically, this is a few years ago when they came out with Einstein. I think this is well before today's AI, and from what we could tell, it would kind of suggest, hey, maybe contact this person for this sales opportunity, or maybe contact that person. But we really just couldn't see what the magic was there, so we never went with their Einstein solution.
Okay. This is very good discussion. And we have really good replies in this space as well. I recommend people, if you'd like to share your opinion or ask questions, you may leave a reply to the space, if you're shy or anything, or if you're afraid that I'm going to kick you out, which I will. Jonathan says it could be AI eating sales callers. Bill B says Salesforce is getting disrupted by AI. And then Jonathan Snyder also says it was Elon's tweets, which is always a possibility. Elon's tweets sometimes hits other companies' stocks. Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say Microsoft Build was a week ago, and they introduced a product with low code so that you could use this graphical interface to control your workflows. So this may be one of the reasons too.
Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about AI. For our businesses, we never use Salesforce. We kind of wrote our own CRM. But when you think about the future of sales, a lot of these products that are being introduced with LLMs, especially as you look at these models like GPT-4o that have latency that's so low, the AI is kind of like the first step, right? Why have humans cold calling customers when you can just have an AI cold call a customer and then pass off to a human as necessary? These AIs are getting so good that people can't even tell. If you say, "Hey, I'm from so and so, let me transfer you to a sales associate," they don't even know they weren't talking to a real person.
Uzi?
To Omar's point, we're actually using Klarna for prospective clients, and we'll have the AI chatbot talk to them, and then we can also study the engagement scores and then make it more of a data-driven project instead of having people reach out.
Earl, welcome. I don't really have a question for you. I just wanted to come up and look pretty. Wessex?
I couldn't hear Uzi. I'm going to drop down and come back up if you want.
Sure. Yeah, that should be seamless. Come on up. Earl, how are you?
Great. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
we have a new rule. I didn't tell you. When someone asks, "Can you hear me?" they have to chip in $100 through the tipping function. So,
Oh, come on.
well,
Come on.
I just
When
implemented
did this rule start?
just
Did it
like
just start now?
10 seconds ago. Exactly.
Okay. I mean, it's really unfortunate for me that that happened, and oh well. I'll send it over to you right away. I didn't really have a question either, but I just wanted to say I was shy. I would like to say that as far as customer service goes, that probably AI generated ones would be nicer than some of the actual people they have nowadays that are just horrendous. So I think it's a pretty low bar to overcome of like, yeah, that AI I talked to was fairly nice to me. So I think there's a real place for that.
Definitely. I mean, you can't really tell. Omar, have you been using the ChatGPT 4.0?
Well, they haven't actually launched the voice assistant version, but I'm just thinking about Earl's comment. You got these sort of Indian call centers today, and you hear someone with an accent. Is it going to be like should the AI also have an Indian accent to make it seem more like a human? Or, do you get this person and it's like, hi, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm talking to an American, but it's actually just an AI.
It'll probably be overly sexualized and flirty if we've learned anything from recent videos. Like, oh my gosh,
Scarlett Johansson
I just
selling you
bought so
something.
much stuff. I don't even know what happened.
What's 6?
I thought something interesting that occurred about a week ago is Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, took what I thought to be kind of a veiled shot at Salesforce. And I'll paraphrase. He said something along the lines of, "If you want to buy software where your employees can just chat with each other all day, that's fine, but that's not us." And I just thought that was wow, like a direct hit on Salesforce. And it also made me interested in, and frankly, how they might go after a similar space like CRM.
Well, if you're saying that's not us, it sounds like he's not going to get into that space.
Right, not the chat with each other stuff. I think their product must offer, just get the business, if you will, was his point.
Uzi.
Yeah, I'm a big Alex Karp fan, and I'm on AIP now, just for curiosity. And it seems like it's just ChatGPT as like the LLM, but you can ask it questions about Microsoft Fabric, and then build different like models. And I'm in the tutorial phase, so I don't know that much, but it's a little bit of a more, I guess, like it takes different input sources in a better way than what I'm working with on Microsoft.
All right. I think that's probably enough Salesforce talk. Um, one thing that we haven't talked about at all is elections. And I see Omar is increasingly focused on it, posting national polling results. Trump seems to be ahead of Biden by 1% or 2.
That's kind of within the margin of error. It's really anybody's game at this point. And we haven't
Mhm.
really started really campaigning, debating against each other, that kind of stuff. So it's largely, I think, going to go based on what that sort of message is when they really start speaking to voters more. Kennedy's also running as an independent. This has the potential, I think, to potentially swing the outcome of the race either way, just because he is polling in, more significant numbers than typical independent candidates. So it's a pretty interesting dynamic here with two people who've been president before and this one independent candidate. And yeah, we're
Yeah.
just 5-6 months away now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that it's not even on the headline. Do you think this is because Trump is not on X and we're just not getting um, this just feels so much quieter than previous elections.
Yeah, it does. I think maybe it's just because I've stopped reading the news as much. Like, I think, they've been covering Trump's trial and stuff, but I haven't really been following it that much. I've seen some headlines here and there. I think the jury's in deliberations now. But it does feel like we haven't really gotten into the meat of the election fight. I don't know.
Machine.
Yeah. So first off, I've been starting to do my own research, quote unquote, as I'm aggregating all these polls myself, my own sheet, to start studying the trends over time. Specifically, each poll has its own biases, but how do they trend over time? And anyways, right now, I mean, I think it's fairly obvious to say that really only 3 states matter in terms of margin of error. All the other ones, I think, are very consistently polling clear to one candidate or the other. And the only 3 states where it's close are Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And these ones, Trump has a lead. I believe in all 3 slightly. And the thing is that basically, by calculations, it kind of depends on these one little districts like in New Hampshire and Nebraska, how they go. But Biden needs to win all 3: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And right now he's not. And so really that's what it's going to come down to. So all these analyses with RFK and how he takes away votes from each candidate, it varies a bit state by state. Really all it's going to matter probably is those 3 states. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot of focus on these states. And I think you're going to see a lot of appeasement to those states. And, obviously Michigan, for one, has a lot of ICE legacy auto industry. So it might be interesting to think about how candidates' messages might relate to, affecting Tesla sentiment.
Yeah, I think Machine makes a really good point, and I agree with him on those 3 swing states. You could really see EVs become a focal point of this election, given that those states are heavily in those industries and they have strong feelings. Biden is, of course, going to play up his union ties, say, I'm for unions, that's going to be good for you. Trump is going to be making an argument that Biden's EV policies are disastrous and that they're going to lose their job to China if he's not elected.
We have a comment on YouTube live chat from Farmer George, who says it's wild that Biden is ahead of Trump in New York by only 9 points. Only 9 points. No hands mode. No hands mode. Uzi and a machine.
I was just about to make a comment about the great state of New York because I'm from there. And I do think a lot of people are jaded with Biden. And I think on top of that, as Tesla community, we've also seen a little bit of hypocrisy with the IRA and then how Elon, as the leader of the EV revolution, has been treated. And then even AI not being on the board. So being part of Tesla, of this community, also gives me rose-colored glasses with the political aspect. And I definitely think that EVs will become politicized. But I'm curious about New York. It does seem like there's a push for New York.
I don't know. I don't know much about New York. You do see some of these cases where there's some states that are surprisingly closer than you would imagine. For instance, Minnesota, which has generally been pretty liberal, Democratic. Biden's not up by very much. It's only like I forget 3 to 5%. Like he's going to win, but it's way closer than you would expect. But I just think for why this is not, you hear about it too much in the news. I think, to be honest, Democrats are in denial. They're totally in denial about the current state of polling. They don't want to believe it's real, of course. And number two, they think Trump's court cases are going to change something. Wait till after the court case, and then we'll see what the polls say. And in fact, my opinion is that all these cases just are fuel to the fire. If you talk to real people from the Midwest or the South, and they talk about these cases, they think it's a witch hunt. And so whether or not he loses or wins, for instance, the Stormy Daniels case, is not going to stop these people from voting for him. So I think it's really a false assumption that's going to help. And right now I think it's pretty strongly in Trump's favor, especially if you consider the last 2 elections. The actual voting turnout favored Trump over what the polls said.
I don't know if, you mean the presidential elections, but the midterm elections, some people were expecting a red wave and it didn't happen, right?
I'm only talking about presidential elections. This is very specific to Trump. Okay, Trump is not a candidate some people have been afraid to say they're going to vote for, especially 2016 and a bit in 2020, because it's very causes a lot of emotions in people. So I expect some of that to continue. I don't think it's going to be as great as it was in the last two, presidential elections, but I think there's still going to be a slight bump in his favor.
The 2020 election, the polls were wrong also. So the polls are just not to be trusted.
Well, I would say the polls have bias for sure. I mean, the polls have implicit and explicit bias. I mean, some of it is intentional, maybe, and some of it's unintentional. It's just about how you ask the questions, who you're polling, all that, and that's why what I care about, like that I could see, because I can't predict how biased they're going to be, but I can see how the trends are within a poll over time. To me, that's the one thing I think I can trust. Like, there's some variability, of course, because of sampling size. But I think if I take the same pollster over months and they're asking people in general, they're probably going to ask with the same sort of bias. And so I can see how things are trending, right? So that just gives me a little more confidence one way or the other. But you're correct. You can't trust them fully.
Well, Machine, I'm glad that you are putting your bachelor degree to work here in data science, and that you found a niche for yourself where you can contribute to this space finally, because everything else you've done, not so much.
Well, it's funny because if you're familiar with, ever heard of Nate Silver? He's like a popular sort of.
Of course.
Of course. Well, I followed him back in 2008 when he had a blog, I think called 538, and it just had a code name called Poblano. And I was always interested in that sort of analysis back then. I kind of regret never making my own because it's really not that complicated to do elections. I mean, to get it right is complicated, but to make a blog that people are going to look at election season is not hard because everyone's looking.
So
Right?
you think you could have been Nate Silver, but you just didn't do it?
No. What I'm saying is, even with Nate Silver, there's all these other bloggers who make their own analyses on polling, and I could have been one of those, like the second tier.
Sure.
I mean, Nate Silver kind of dominates that space right now. But even he was wrong in 2020. Remember that?
I agree, and I actually was critical because, unfortunately, elections are a black or white answer. Did the person win or lose? No one cares about the probability, right? You output a probability distribution, and you could say, "Oh, my probability distribution was great," and just it was just a little off, right? And you could argue that you did good modeling and you still got the wrong result, but no one cares. People care about the result, and so he was still wrong. Like, I don't care if your model is not fancy and it's just measuring something else, but if it keeps predicting it correctly, you win. You should get the praise. And he lost, and so did everyone else, and that definitely should be something taken against them a bit. And data scientists will argue with me, "Oh no, but he did proper modeling and all that." And I'm like, well, it still doesn't matter because it's such a sparse event. It's hard to model these things over time and really understand what matters because we don't really have that many data points.
Okay, good. Thank you. Are you going to mute yourself? Thank you.
Sorry.
Apology accepted. Oh,
Why is that not $100? Just asking.
he's not that rich. He still drives a Hardware 2 car. I have to be measured with him. Pick my battles. Machine?
Is someone trying to threaten to fine me because my mute button was off? Who is that?
You missed the earlier conversation.
I got fined $100 for asking if people could hear me, and that just feels like a less egregious offense. But that's just.
You need to take personal responsibility for your mistakes instead of trying to look at, "Oh, but it's not fair. He didn't get it." You sound like my daughter. My daughter last night. It's not fair. My other daughter got to go in the pool. Like, stop.
Listen, this is not family therapy for you, machine. That's another $100. Go ahead.
Well, let's just go back to politics then. That's a much more calm issue.
I mean, we have to speak about Tesla at some point.
All right, let's just get to the bottom of it. I think now let's relate this. I'm going to relate this to Tesla at least, and people who followed Tesla for many years, such as yourself and Omar, since he was like 12, know if you follow the media response that you have this one instance now that that the media can distort things magnificently, right? And now you should know, and I hate acting conspiratorial, that the media, you can't trust the media for anything. And I've seen other issues of current day, such as the issues in the Middle East, that there's the same things happening basically at a much bigger scale than Tesla. And I see all this, and now I'm 43 years old, and I'm just like turning into a curmudgeon because I'm like, I don't trust anyone. Screw both of these candidates. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I would never have voted for Trump before because, yeah, I don't really like him personally. But like, if I'm looking at the response right now in the world and these industries, publication industries, and how much power and influence they have over people, like, I am disgusted and I want them torn down. And if I think that's more important than any other issue, even Tesla, and I'm thinking, who would I vote for that would be more likely to cause these things to accelerate, to destroy mainstream media? I sound insane, but to me, I'm like, wait a second, is that Trump?
You're voting for
Well,
Trump?
Omar. Well, Omar, hold on. Omar is voting for Kennedy. He was talking about it earlier. And why don't you vote for Kennedy?
Well, I don't know who I'm voting for right now. Number one, this is an honest discussion. And I'm just saying this issue.
It's okay if you want to vote for Trump. You can tell us. We're not going to judge you.
Trust me, I would tell you if I did. I'm telling you that I think the biggest issue is media and their influence, and they're focused on making profits. They don't care about anything else. And it's just, everything's destructive. And so I'm looking at how do we fix this is the biggest problem I can see right now.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, if Machine is thinking about voting for Trump from California, like the most liberal part of California, then interesting. Are you going for a cabinet position or something? What is this?
Well, that's side of my mind. I mean, I definitely think I'm qualified. So,
what position are you qualified for? Data science, Department of Data Science.
Whatever. How about Pete Buttigieg's position? Give me a break. Does this guy know about transportation?
Yeah. Actually, this is a good segue into Tesla a little bit. I guess Wall Street Journal had an article about Trump and Elon. Omar, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, just on Machine's point, I don't think that the media is the biggest problem. Obviously, people write a lot of things on the internet. Not everything is true. So if you believe everything you read without thinking critically, you have a problem with how you process information. We kind of need to realize in this world that there's a lot of bullshit out there. And just because it says New York Times or Atlantic or something doesn't mean it's necessarily, I mean, it generally indicates that they did more work on making sure it's true, but it doesn't always mean, it's true. So I think that's kind of just something we have to learn as a country. I would probably say some of the biggest issues we face are like our deficit, for example. We've got high rates, mounting debt. You have potential for instability in the financial markets. If bond yields are higher, that pushes up the cost of capital across the economy. So these are issues that really need to be dealt with by somebody who's competent, who's ideally not insanely old. And those are kind of, I think, some of the pressing issues, economic issues, inflation. Running a huge deficit is also fiscally stimulative, which is increasing inflation, which is kind of just exacerbating the whole cycle. So just doing the basic things a president is supposed to do would be great, but I'm not sure that any of the candidates are really prepared to do that.
Yeah, there's a comment in the replies machine for you. Tesla Mars says, Machine is way more into politics than I thought. I love it. So you can be our point person, especially for the polling And then maybe Omar can give us an update every now and then about what each candidate's policies are as they relate to Tesla and EVs in general. That would be perfect as we go along. Machine, and then Amy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've lived in 3 other countries, places. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff in my life, and I try to think critically. So I think that does cause a lot of conflict with respect to politics.
But
Amy?
sorry, I forgot just on the Elon thing. I think that he kind of needs to work with whoever the president is. So if Trump's the president, I think he should work with him, even if it is perceived negatively. If Biden's the president, he should work with him. Biden doesn't really want to. If Kennedy somehow becomes president, he should work with him. SpaceX is a federal contractor. Obviously, Tesla is heavily dependent on government policy. Trump has said that he wants to have policy against EVs. So whoever the president is, I would hope that Elon would advance SpaceX and Tesla's interests to whoever is in charge.
Amy?
Yeah, just I was going to say to Omar's point about, you have to use your critical thinking skills when you're listening to the media. The thing that irks me is that the media is always distorting what Elon says. You really have to work hard to hear, go find out what he really said.
Uzi?
To Amy's point, there's this epistemological uncertainty, or like we're uncertain about how we're going to build knowledge because there's a faulty media, and with Elon in particular, I just like looking at interviews, looking at it from the horse's mouth without the regurgitation of another source that will interpret it for you, because that is not unhelpful. So, for instance, with the Wall Street Journal, bring it to the Tesla part.
We're kind of getting too one-sided here. So Earl, since you are the Tesla Q representative on the board right now.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, how is that reasonable fans the community going? You guys accumulated a few.
It's very reasonable.
Yeah, is it?
That's the report.
What do you think about?
Talk about it.
Okay, I got you. Oh, is it really?
Secret
You guys
community?
can't talk about? No way.
Yeah, that's like the first rule of the reasonable whatever. I haven't checked it on in weeks. So
anyway.
Yeah, the communities are kind of a weird thing. It's like you don't remember to go over there into the community.
Exactly. They're so easy to forget about. Yeah.
Earl, what do you think about the media chatter that we just had? What do you think about, a couple of people commented that, it's hard to find what Elon said. Media contorts what Elon said to their agenda. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Omar said. I think you do have to kind of look things up on your own. I think people influenced by that are going to be influenced by bad news anyway. Like if you're not going to take the time to be critical about it. I do think that the truth though is probably in between a little bit, because you can't really take Elon's words as gospel either, because sometimes you find out that there probably was some truth to the stories that media outlets got, and he's not always exactly on the up and up with debunking some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, you do. If you that was the whole fun of Twitter a long time ago, it was like a cheat code for investing in Tesla, because it was the only place to really find good information about what was happening. If you, for example, the factory in China, if you listen to the mainstream media, you would think that it was either never going to happen or it was, starting to be built, but they didn't really mean it. But people on this app knew that it was happening, it was going to happen, and it was going just fine. And that turned out to be a great piece of investment advice.
Omar, I've seen a couple of threads last night and today, about the lawsuit that was just filed, I think, against Jared Birchall and Elon, especially about when he was accumulating shares in Twitter and the timing of the filings around that and the intention? Do you have any thoughts on that topic?
Well, as you know, you're required to, within 3 days, inform the market if you're buying the shares. By not informing them, the price doesn't spike, and that lets you to continue to accumulate at a lower price. So the SEC is investigating it, and if they determine that it wasn't a oversight and that it was actually done intentionally to lower the price, then he's going to be fined, at least. If not, pursuing a directors and officer ban or something like that. But that's probably unlikely for something like this, filing a form a day late. They would probably have a fine that is commensurate with the value that he might have saved by not disclosing it. So what they want to do is they can't allow people to sort of flaunt the rules and use it to their advantage. They have to obviously make sure that people make the proper disclosures.
Machine, how do you think about some of the securities? I mean, we don't really talk about securities risk here, the litigation risk. It's kind of a section in the 10Q, in the 10K. The paragraphs get updated with a few more words every quarter. But a lot of people, a lot of investors kind of write it off as this is not my expertise area, so I'm not going to talk about it. How do you approach it? How do you think about it as an investor?
Well, I'm in the middle of some children's store with kids' music, so
Yeah, that's no excuse. Just please talk about some legal risk. How old are these children?
No, I'm saying the store's for like 5-10-year-olds. I would say, listen, if it's going to affect Elon's ability to sell Tesla shares, then I think it's relevant. If he's just going to be fined, it's nothing to do with Tesla, and it's not going to affect his ownership of Tesla, then I think any movement in Tesla stock would be short term and probably not that big of a deal. So I don't know how big the fine would be. So that would define whether or not I care or not.
Okay.
So calling in from a children's store is okay. Calling in from a children's store and saying, "Can you hear me?" would be a fine. I'm just clarifying for all the people who are worried about speaking.
Yeah, if another fine we have here is complain about fines. So that's another $100. Thank you.
I should have seen that coming. That's a good rule. Yeah.
Do you want soup or nuts? Omar, where's 12.4? What's happening?
I don't know. It sounds like we're waiting for a 12.4.1 or something. Chuck Cook says there's still drivers outside his house. So I would hope maybe this weekend we could see the first customers get it. But even then, it's going to be a few people. It's probably going to be at least a few weeks until an average person gets it.
Does anyone live near Chuck? Because I really want somebody to just attach crazy cameras to their Tesla and just drive around his house so that he can report on it. I think that would bring me great joy. Throwing that out in the universe. Like big old-timey cameras, like the big film, like literal film in them, taped to the car, not just me.
I mean, how do you know that somebody hasn't already done that?
Maybe what if that's all that's happening? Like the people driving around, they've just been trolling Chuck for years. Man, that would be like Hall of Fame material.
Would we ever find out who did it? I mean, I've seen pictures of a Tesla Model 3 with duct taped cameras.
See, now I'm suspicious.
Like, does that sound like Tesla? I don't know.
Yeah, why did they have to duct tape the old cameras? What was the point of that exactly?
Just running out of money, obviously. They don't have money to
Cutting.
properly install it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cost cutting. They were down to $1 duct tape.
Yeah. We fired
Toilet-
the camera installer and hired a duct tape.
Engineers love duct tape.
Interesting. I didn't know that. All right, so no news on 12.4. We're waiting for 12.4.1. I see Miss Jillian in the crowd if she would like to come up and kind of give us an update on her rides. Would appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? You may request to speak. 0.99% APR financing for new Model Y, if ordered by tomorrow, is going to end, Tesla North America said. So I guess this is going away, Omar, huh?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I think maybe they've got more in store here. It seems like financing is a really important part of the equation of selling cars here, especially in a high rate environment. I think it's a competency that Tesla just didn't have. And when people are going into their dealer and their local BMW dealer or Mercedes dealer is offering them low interest financing, that's a big reason for them to go with those brands. I was just reading semi analysis last night, and they were talking about the entry of Dell into the AI server market. And they said, we think they're going to take a lot of share from Supermicro because of Dell Financial Services. Dell Financial Services allows customers to finance the cost of these AI server purchases at a three percentage points less than what you would get if you got outside financing to buy from Supermicro or buy from NVIDIA directly. So they said this is really important, and I think it's true in the auto business. True, there's a reason that most major automakers have a captive finance arm. As a matter of fact, some brands like Nissan, they actually don't turn any profit in their core business, and the profit is all entirely financing. And he said, why would anyone buy a Nissan instead of a Toyota? Because when you can't get a loan to buy a Toyota, Nissan's got you covered, and they'll help you out and they'll get you a loan for a Nissan. So I think financing is very important. And I don't think they necessarily, I don't know if they really want to go full GM and have a major captive financing arm. I think it's better to have most of the financing done off balance sheet. But I mean, you can definitely see the response in terms of orders and demand. I think it's a much more effective way to offer a sales incentive than cutting price. Much more orderly, much more calm. You can control the time a lot more. Way better for the business overall. It's making the price cuts we saw before look kind of amateurish in comparison to how well this worked.
When you say how well this worked, can you elaborate on that? Maybe specifics around it.
Well, nobody's upset that the price is cut, right? The price actually did get cut from a monthly payment perspective. It got cut a lot. But the perception among people that bought isn't, why did I buy? So that's important because you don't want to create this mentality of, I need to wait for the price to go down. The price may go down next quarter or next month or next week. Then people are just waiting and waiting and waiting. So that's an important thing to overcome. Second, people really hate buying interest. They consider it a waste. So, okay, let's say I buy a Model 3 for 39,000, that's all well and good. But if I'm paying an extra 7,000 now, that's not even the cost of the car, that's just interest. It feels like a waste, especially for smart people who know how to manage their own finances and know about this stuff. They say to themselves, let me just wait until next year. I'll get a much lower financing rate and I'll be able to buy the same car much cheaper. So that's really, the elasticity of demand, I think, for financing is actually greater than pricing because people feel like the interest is a waste. And as the car depreciates, you don't get any credit for that interest, right? You can still sell the asset and get some fraction of that asset value back, but you're not going to get any of the interest back. And, for some people who have bad credit, they get proposed loan rates of 9 to 12%. So a lot of people just can't even get a car. A lot of people have negative equity. The car's worth less than the amount outstanding on the loan. So they can't buy a new car. this addresses all of these problems, which have really been slowing sales growth, I think. And it's the same kind of incentive, but it's much more constructive. And then you're telling people, okay, order by May 30th. Now you're getting all the orders in before the last month of the quarter. You're able to deliver them all in the last month of the quarter and get them in before that finish line when you have to do quarterly reporting. So there's a lot of benefits. There's even, more benefits than I think I listed here, but it definitely seems like a much more effective way to offer a sales incentive than price cuts.
Well, this is one of those things, it is financial engineering. It's one of those things that, benefit you in the near term and can come back to bite you in the ass later on. So I guess we'll see how it turns out. So it's not simple. Everything has a pros and cons. But I'm going to let Jennifer yell at Earl first, and then we're going to continue with that discussion. Jennifer, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Yaman and Macro Analyst, for having me on. And I'd like to expand on Omar's thing about financing. Is it would be great if Tesla were to offer financing for service. I understand that majority of the time you don't need the Tesla serviced, but like for instance, out here in Colorado Springs, we have a lot of hailstorms, and so we routinely need to get the windshield like cracks repaired, or even replaced if it's like big enough. Then like it would be nice to have that option, like if you're cost sensitive, to have it financed, and that would help persuade more people to buy Teslas.
All right.
Yeah, and that's all.
I thought you were going to yell at Earl.
Oh no!
So Jennifer replied to the space and said, "Don't send people to
yeah. Oh
Chuck's
yeah,
house."
I did.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. We got it. That's fine. All right, Paul.
No, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to comment about the Model 3 with the cameras and various placement. Like engineers typically do that when they're testing out new position placement, not necessarily a different type of camera, but it's possibly to just kind of see, can you build a car with less cameras and get the same amount of maybe information? And I think that's what they're doing. They're testing a new camera layout, perhaps for the robotaxi.
Magic.
Hey, circling back to the 0.99% financing, that's pretty much a disguised price cut. And I wanted to ask, what do you guys think the impact is on gross margin for this? I've run the numbers, but I want to see if you guys ran the numbers on how this promotion is going to affect gross margin.
Yeah, we talked about this when it first came out, but it should be noted that Tesla used to offer very deep discounts on the new inventory page, and they removed all of those about a month before they introduced the 0.99% deal. So it's to be seen. We don't know how many people are using it. We don't know what the credit score requirements are. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think that Tesla is easing into it. And I don't think there's going to be a massive impact on the current quarter from it. And they may ramp the financing business in the coming quarters, but we'll see. I think there's a lot of unknowns at this point to answer that question reliably. Omar?
Yeah, I think when you do a price cut on the Model Y, you're really giving it to all buyers. With this, first off, it's targeted in select markets, right? It's targeted in the US where they have inventory they want to move. And you have three kinds of buyers, right? You got lease buyers. So lease buyers, nothing changes there. Same cost structure for lease buyers. Then you got cash buyers. They're so rich that they're buying the entire car in cash. In many cases, they want to avoid interest. So you're not giving a discount to those people. They're just buying at the full price. It's the people who want to finance. You're giving it to them for the model you want, the Model Y. The other benefit is that you're actually encouraging a higher ASP versus a lower ASP. Because, for example, let's say you wanted to buy FSD. the cost of interest on the FSD to finance the FSD would make it much more expensive than subscribing. But with the 0.99% financing rate, you can actually get it in for $100 a month. So essentially, you're locking in the price. So whereas with a high interest rate, people want to keep the ASP of the car down. They don't want to pick extra colors. They don't want to pick the white seats. They don't want to pick the extra wheels. They don't want to pick FSD because they want to ideally pay for most of the car in cash. When it's low interest financing, it's okay, I can actually borrow over the long term and it's not going to cost me that much. So that could have a positive effect on the product mix as far as the configurations go.
Michael, and then Magic.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the financing and say that the gross margin impact is unknown because we don't know how Tesla is arranging the financing. We don't know if they're doing it on their own balance sheet, in which case it wouldn't flow through the income statement, or if they're buying it down through the partner, in which it would flow through the income statement. So without that detail, we can't really model it.
Okay, so yes, we can provide estimates and approximations. We don't know the exact numbers. I threw every. Oh, okay. So you took the figures off the.
Yeah, you can't put something up there before I review it. That's the rule. Go ahead, explain. You can explain it. You can reference it. You can reply to the space with it. You just can't pin it up there. Okay.
Okay, so that showed that the price cuts, the estimated price cuts, and what that was going to do to discounts. So that's what I'm just trying to show. I'm trying to be transparent as to what that would do to.
Yeah, I understand, but I understand, but I still have to review all pinned posts up there. First of all, the person you're quoting from on that post is not a trusted source. It's not a reliable source. I've seen their post, and it's just not good enough to be in the space. But you can reference it and share it as, you can reference it. You can, tell the story. You can reply to the space with it. You can post it on your own page. You just can't pin it up. That's the rule. Okay.
Okay. So we ran the numbers, right? And approximately, it appears that it's going to be about 20% in terms of impact to gross margin. Okay. And if assuming that they find that's with a really good credit score, the worse the credit score, the worse. If you offer 0.99 to someone who has a bad credit score, Tesla's going to take a hit. So it's 20% up. Okay. That's how it works. And if anybody wants to do the math on it, we can compare math. I want to focus on numbers and focus on math because traditional financing is 7-8% for someone with a good credit score right now. Buying it down that much has an effect on gross margin. That means Tesla potentially is moving cars at zero gross margin to negative gross margin on this deal. That's not very. That's not
so
to do that long.
So I actually have a coffee bet with that person now, because they said the same thing on that thread. I think you posted. They said that Tesla's gross margin will be at zero or negative, which is obviously just out of. That's why I don't allow just random posts being up there. That's ridiculous. Completely ignores the fact that in Q1, Tesla was offering very deep discounts on the new inventory page. They reversed those out and they offered the 0.99%. And that's the kind of quality I see from that person. That's why their posts are not allowed in the pinned space. Okay. Omar, then Michael.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with regards to the inventory discounts. I think they've really simplified their inventory system here. They've eliminated those discounts. And when you just, there's no doubt that there's going to be some impact to gross margin. What the actual gross margin figure comes out to be, we'll see. But when you just do a comparative analysis of the cost of a global price cut, right? Because once you kind of cut in one market, the other markets start to expect it too, versus a targeted financing offer in select markets on select models for a limited amount of time, 1 month, the impact is obviously, much less in terms of the number of cars that even qualify for the incentive. So I think overall it's going to be financially beneficial to the company compared to cutting the price just the way they have in the past.
Michael?
Yeah. So again, I want to reiterate that you don't know the gross margin impact because Tesla can finance it themselves on their own balance sheet, in which case it would not flow through the income statement, and they would just be tying up cash that they would otherwise be earning 5% on. And you could say, yeah, they're losing out on
No,
that 5%.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Okay. And then again, it's also, like Omar said, it's US market, Model Y only. So it's only about 20% or so of the global volume. So it's versus a global price cut across all models, which they've done a number of times. Some of the price cuts they've reversed, and like the inventory discounts, and then they were stepping up prices and stepping down prices by 1,000 here and there. So it's not that as straightforward as Magic is painting it.
Yeah. Magic, final comment, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, so yes, so if they do finance in-house, that's a negative cash flow, right? That's very bad for cash flow because they're receiving less cash than they should be in a normal market environment. And if they do it through a third-party vendor, a financier, then they take a hit to gross margin. Either way, there's less cash. Now, you want to chop it up this way or that way, that's the truth. I just want one final thing. I want somebody here to run an estimate of what this discount is going to be. I want you to use numbers and math to explain to me what you estimate the discount is. Not theory, not that. We want facts.
We did that already. When it first came out, we kind of ran a back of the envelope calculation. A couple of people did. I understand you have a very low opinion of Tesla bulls. I understand that you think that the Tesla bulls don't do any research. The fact, however, is that we've actually done this research a month ago, and you're coming out here guns blazing, claiming this and that. And we have a couple of people answering your questions, and I see the frustration and the passion as if you have like your life savings in put options or something. But the back of the envelope rule of thumb that we talked about was it's similar to the discounts that were being offered on the new inventory page in Q1. Okay. But this is way too early to kind of make a huge, big deal out of this because it just started. It's going to take years to ramp the financing business. The impact on Q1, I think, is going to be very small. And you're not going to get the negative gross margin that you're talking about, not even close. Omar?
Yeah, I see this potentially impacting not more than 15 to 16% of global delivery volume, given that the US is about a third and Model Y is about half of that mix. So, 15, 16%, if they made zero margin on these cars, they still wouldn't get to a zero gross margin globally.
Okay. Thank you. That's an easy copy bet. All right. So I'm going through Omar's page, see if there's anything else we need to hit on. FSD launching for Tesla employees first in China. Omar, what's the latest on that? So I guess there's some movement on FSD in China front, huh?
Yeah, I guess we're seeing some regulatory filings come in. We've also seen on Tesla employees' cars in the software section where it says you're enrolled in Wave 1. For some people, it's now saying you're enrolled in FSD Beta. The software hasn't actually shipped yet, but it looks like the rollout plan is going to be to go to Tesla employees first. And they'll be the first to get it and be able to start testing it in China. After that, I presume there would be a beta testing program that's kind of like what we saw in the US, with a few sort of hand-chosen journalists or bloggers maybe covering it. And then after that, you'd see it expand to the general public and anybody who had a Tesla. So super exciting if you're a Chinese Tesla owner. We're actually seeing progress towards it launching in China.
What do you make of this? Okay, thank you very much for the overview. I think that's a pretty good summary. We can probably move on from that. I saw the big tech alert that you tweeted or reposted. Big tech alert says Jeff Bezos has started following fantastic takes. Isn't this a Tesla Q account?
I would
What is
call
that
him
about?
more like a bearish Tesla customer, maybe. but definitely
Uh,
kind of posting negative Tesla stuff. So I did think it was kind of funny that Jeff was following him, Jeff Bezos.
Interesting.
Could
I
be
mean,
a
next
little.
thing you know,
You're sensing a lot of saltiness and jealousy towards, I think, what Elon's doing in AI. These guys get very competitive with each other. Your Bezoses and your Musks and your Altmans of the world.
I mean, next thing you know, like I wouldn't have expected him to kind of start following these accounts, but next thing you know, he's going to start following Machine.
Yeah, I mean,
I
when
could
am
see
I
it.
going to get the respect that I deserve? I definitely think I need one of these big CEOs to follow me. So one of you get on that.
Okay. Hey, I saw your thread the other day. Was it yesterday? Talking about resale values of Tesla. Can you give us an overview?
Yeah. So as you know, since you've been in this space for too long, I've been talking about this for at least a year and highlighted previously how in sync used car price trends were with the overall list price of Tesla, historically going up and down in the past 2 years or more than 2 years. And always saying that's what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting to see when these used car prices would bottom out because we're not getting that clarity from Tesla and how they update their list new car prices, or for now, as we see, they change it to doing financing changes. So I've been studying that for a while, and it's
Your sound quality, your connection is really bad. You're cutting off.
going down. We thought it would flatline, kept going down last year. Basically, all the well, I don't know if it's mute me, if not. And I've been waiting for that to flatline, and finally it has.
Okay, so all that to
Hold on one second,
say,
there's a
the
bad
resale
loss.
values have stabilized. Thank you. Let's go to Sawyer.
Yeah, I
I feel
think
like he's
part of it
getting
is the
more.
financing.
I feel like he's getting more verbose as he ages.
I think part of it's the financing as opposed to price cuts. And I think part of it is also the FSD effect. I do believe that people are buying used and new Teslas more to try FSD.
Machine.
Yeah, I think it could be FSD. Could be partially due to seasonality. In the spring, there's generally an uptick in prices, but I think overall, it's just simply the cars are super cheap now, and there's only so far down you can go. And I think though it's good to see that I don't think they're going to have to cut prices really any further. They can just modulate with interest rates, and then we can see when they start upticking and that being a bullish signal. And to your second point, that I'm more verbose. I mean, I'm in the car. When I'm in the car, yeah, I'm distracted and I can't speak succinctly. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Bradford, how are you?
I'm good. So I playing around with the auto loan calculator and just going off of Tesla's website. If you choose a 5-year loan, you can get the 1% financing rate. And what I'm seeing is that total dollars over 5 years is like a $7,000 difference between like a 1% interest rate and a 7% interest rate. And but that's paid over 5 years. So like the current like the present value of that isn't $7,000, but it is meaningful. I agree with most of the discussion that I feel like this is buoying or supporting used car prices, and overall I like the choice by Tesla. Most people are on monthly payments. It's just the truth of the world. Most people don't have like Tesla profits to buy Tesla cars with cash. It's just that's just a
Especially not
very
lately.
yeah, it's definitely not lately. It's like that's very rare. That's very rare and weird that many of us have been able to do that.
All right, thank you. what do you think is going to be the impact on margins in Q2? First, Bradford, and then Michael.
Yeah, I can't help with that one. Sorry.
Michael?
I haven't done a detailed analysis yet, but I do think I think it's difficult to tell without knowing exactly how the financing is flowing through the income statement, because it is going to be like 1 month of data in the United States, so it's gonna be like 10-15% of the total volume, and without knowing how that flows through the income statement or the balance sheet, it's hard to tell the impact on the gross margins. But overall, I expected the gross margins pre the financing deal to rebound.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm optimistic long term it's going to help. Just because, like, supporting used car prices is going to help with leases and used car sales. Tesla is the largest used car seller in the United States, which is it's pretty shocking but cool.
Scott, did you get a chance to talk? All right. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. We have Pennington coming up. Pennington, go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering for Bradford, do you expect or did you think that margins were going to increase because of COGS going down or the price itself or some other reason prior to the financing?
Just a solidifying or bottoming of the pricing is why I think it would come down. I mean that the margins would be bottoming. That's why. I don't know
Machine.
why I don't know why costs would go up this quarter. Why would costs go up?
I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys are done talking, but I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Machine.
If margins have already bottomed in Q1 or will be a little bit lower in Q2. I would think they'd be a bit lower. It doesn't seem like COGS, based on their discussion, would be significantly less this quarter than last. And I do think we've seen still a drop in prices overall. So I'm guessing Q2 is the bottom. I guess it is true. I don't know what the calculation, because obviously a lot of this was produced in Q1, but it's not everything's not recognized to the statement until it's delivered. So they will deliver more cars this quarter than last. I don't know if that's enough to increase margins. But bigger picture, I would just say to note that used car prices, there's not a used car market and a new car market. There's just a car market in general. And the used car price trend, in my opinion, is indicative of what's happening with new car demand as well. Because otherwise there'll be arbitrage right around that very newly used vehicles.
Oh, Ryan.
So, what about the concept of Tesla buys back a lot of their cars, and maybe in 3 years from now, this could be a potential profit margin for them to actually make more money on the car because they buy back all these used lease cars and then put them back for sale. So, I think long term, it might be actually kind of smart.
Rangrit, 84.
Yeah, I know y'all are kind of down in the weeds with numbers and whatnot, but I wanted to get a bit more speculative and talk about the Cybervan. I know Tesla has announced it. Well, they've kind of hinted at it, but I feel like that is a great profit producer if they actually make the Cybervan and get something utilitarian on the roads, easier to make than the Tesla Semi, and could kind of, drown out some of these Rivian vans I see out on the roads today.
Bradford.
Yeah, I hope to see a Cybervan too. I think they're going to fully scale Cybertruck first before they would add another model. Just kind of like we saw them fully scale Model Y before they added more complexity to the business. That would be my guess, but I hope we see it.
Machine.
I know not all the benefits of the Cybertruck exoskeleton were like delivered on versus what it was proposed originally, but do you think it's true that the Cybertruck design is ultimately a cost reduction versus the standard built vehicle? Maybe it's only the reduction of paint. Like, do you think a cyber van would be cheaper to produce than a regular van for the same size?
So you also have a reduction in stamping, so the needs for stamping is different, but you do have a difference with cutting. One thing we learned about the doors recently is there's no because it's so strong on the outside, there's no need for a protective, I don't know if it's a shield or a bar on the inside of the door. And I think that probably follows through for most of the car, not just around the doors. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm wondering how it all shakes out. I think it's generally going to be positive, but one thing we've also heard from Texas is they may have taken a lot of workers from the Model Y side to help scale the Cybertruck side.
Machine.
I know this is not an efficient market yet for pricing of these, but I'm just intrigued because if I remember correctly, with Rivian and their earnings calls, saying that their van was their best in quotations here. We're using this term lightly. Best margin vehicle. That it was performing better than their R1T and R1S. And I don't know if that's just because Amazon was willing to pay more for it since they're invested in the company, but I'm intrigued by what the profit potential would be for these.
Yes.
Yeah, the vans are easier to build. There's just not as many parts to it. That's why the margins are a little higher. And also, but the problem is the market isn't as high, obviously, as big as like your cyber SUV. So it's give and take. Also, Ford dominates that market, and if you look at the Rivian's van compared to Ford's van, ICE, half price. So I mean, I understand your margins are contribution positive and everything, but you can't sell them. So anyway. Bill Bob Joe had a comment earlier. I'm trying to find it. Tesla had so man, these bears are just so freaking like this magic guy is in the replies just going nuts, tagging people. Nuts. It's like he tagged Machine and his mom at the same time. Goodness gracious, dude, relax. And it's a shitty thread too. A shitty thread of like 89 tweets. It's like all wrong. But
Yeah,
anyway, if
and
you
it's
guys want
just
to read
completely
it,
unnecessary, given that I
it's
already
ridiculous.
tagged Machine's mom last night.
Perfect.
So inappropriate.
That was perfect. That was the best we ever heard. Best mama joke your mama joke we heard from Omar. All right, congratulations, Omar. Bill Baggio also says Tesla had an inventory build of 50,000 vehicles in Q1. That impact was already seen in Q1 results. Reversing the inventory build and turning into cash will be a tailwind, regardless of the financing deal. Now, obviously, that assumes that you're going to be able to work down that inventory. It's a challenging market. It's actually a good segue into. I want to get Bradford's thoughts. Obviously, Bradford has a diversified portfolio for himself and for clients, so he may have some thoughts on macroeconomic considerations that are going on. We saw the Salesforce stock, as we talked earlier at the beginning of the space. For those of you who just joined, Salesforce stock dropped more than 20%, even though they beat on the bottom line and they pretty much came close to the expectations on the top line. The outlook was slightly lower than expected, and the reaction of the stock kind makes you question if there is a weakness going on the macro level. Bradford, what do you think? What are you seeing on the economy right now? Some of the stocks that you may have in your portfolio. What does that mean for Tesla specifically, given that we came into the quarter with a bit of a inventory? What are your thoughts?
So one stock we own is a company called Lovesac. They're a higher end furniture company. What's interesting about them is they don't really play the fashions in furniture. They have a low SKU or low part count. And so they're just totally run differently. Their growth rate has been challenged through the whole high interest rate thing, but they've still grown while a lot of the furniture industry has shrunk. Um, I we saw something similar with Tesla. I think one thing Tesla's suffering from also is just I think a confusion or a brainwashing in the consumer between like hybrids and BEVs. The consumer seems increasingly stretched. We're seeing increasing credit card delinquencies. Excess savings at the household level is lower than what it was before COVID. So yeah, auto loan delinquencies have gone up. So the consumer's fairly tapped out. We lightened up earlier in the year because we're a bit concerned about potential recession. This is more for like diversified portfolios where you have money in stocks and bonds and we have a portion of that's in Tesla, but we do help out people who are like all in on Tesla, and people's version of all in differs. I've never been a fan of Salesforce. They have a big presence in Indianapolis. Their product was for large enterprise, and if you bought their software, you had to pay them like millions of dollars to customize the software for you. And yeah, I don't think that's like where software is going. Yeah, it can be powerful, but like having these uh, customer relationship management softwares where it's that expensive to update it. And that's like this profit center that Salesforce is milking. I think it just put them in a bad situation where they became like dependent on that. So I would talk to people who work for Salesforce in Indianapolis, and I didn't really hear good things as far as like how entrepreneurial they were, or really getting after changing things. It sounded like they
Yeah,
were bureaucratic and had fiefdoms and all the things
yeah.
that you don't want to see.
Yeah, as we talk about Salesforce and possible indications on the macro environment, I mean, the stock markets were down today too. Dell Technologies just announced. And they're down 15% after hours, after being down 5% during the day. So there's something going on. And if you don't have a short on NVIDIA yet, Machine, what do you think?
I agree with Bradford's points, and I mean, you see things about like credit spending, like Discovery. Their people are hitting higher limit not seen in a while, and I'm trying to, I have right now for now very diversified portfolio, but all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to add more shorts to companies that I think are overvalued. Only if it makes sense. And I've put in some shorts on some of these restaurant companies which have egregious valuations and aren't really growing that much. And so I'm adding to those because I think some of the sentiment might cause more downturn, and I want to kind of be ready for that. I am prepared to shorten NVIDIA a bit, but it would be a temporary thing and only if certain price action happens, I think. So I'm not doing it yet. If I had been prepared today at 1150, I might have shorted a bit, but I don't think that's a long-term smart thing to do.
Okay.
still?
Half hour. We have 30 minutes left. This is a 30-minute warning. 30-minute warning. After which we're going to go to Patreon, and there's an after party for 20 minutes summary of what we talked about in here. Maybe touch on a couple of data points, macro on the macro front, maybe Dell Technologies. And we have chat rooms on Patreon. There's a chat room called Big Tech. I shared my notes on Microsoft, NVIDIA, and AMD earnings calls, and it looks like the next one is going to be Dell. These all kind of tie in together, and that's the kind of the understanding I'm trying to build, how these big tech companies tie into each other. So half hours, machine.
Yeah, just to note, I had bought Dell like 2-3 months ago, and some options, so it was leveraged, and I sold it for a nice gain, like 25-30%. And I was looking yesterday at how much had gone up past, and I was like, oh god damn it, like I could have made like 80% return. Now I don't feel so bad because it probably ended up just fine.
Yeah.
Secondly,
the other rule that we have in here is that you can't talk about the trades if you did not talk about them before you put them on, or when you put them on. Okay. Before you made gains. I don't know about that. I don't remember you talking about Dell.
So are you saying
did you,
now?
Did you hear?
Dell isn't publicly traded, are they?
Oh my gosh! Stop. Nope. Maybe we should end the space right there. They want public again. They want IPO again.
Oh yeah,
all right,
that's right.
Okay. Machine, go ahead.
So are you saying you need me to tell you my trade right when it happens?
Yeah. Before, like, you can't go Einstein 2020. Oh, these are the trades that made money on. Okay.
That's fine. I did mention that. Anyways, my other point is it's really rude for you not to invite me to the after party. I mean, do you realize in real life, if you try to have a party and you didn't invite me, how lame it would be?
No, everybody's invited. But this is like, X hasn't opened up my subset. I've been waiting for a year for X to open up my subscriptions, and patrons have been contributing for several months now without expecting anything in return. So this is my way of kind of giving them a summary. So to the extent that you find that valuable, you may sign up and join us on the after party. It's only 20-30 minutes. There's no machine, so the signal noise ratio is higher. Bradford?
So, I've been pounding the table on NVIDIA for a while, and recently I've just gotten more concerned with how much FOMO I've seen and how much excitement I've seen around NVIDIA. I don't see anything wrong with the business, but the reason why I bring it up is overall with my clients who are more diversified, what I've been hearing from them is FOMO. They're looking at the indices. They're seeing how the indices are doing versus what we're doing. And we found out something really interesting where if you look at the Magnificent Six, so the Magnificent Seven without Tesla, like over the last 5 quarters or so, they're up like over 100%. But if you look at the rest of the S&P 500, so the S&P, we'll call it the 494, they're up like less than 20% over the last 5 quarters. And so people are like seeing the overall indexes, and if they're not like heavy in tech, they've seen lackluster results, and they've been FOMOing into like the best performers. And typically when I see stuff like this, it's concerning. And you look at a company like Apple, I think it may be a little similar to Salesforce. Apple's earnings is not growing. They're at a 27 PE. I think you highlighted this last week. It's like they're not growing. They're priced for like as a growth stock. And as an investor that cares about valuation, even though I invest in growth companies, that concerns me.
Absolutely. Great points. I do see the FOMO you're talking about NVIDIA on so many different fronts, on different platforms as well. I mean, it's a clear bubble. It's a clear bubble, and it's going to come down at some point. And with Salesforce dropping 20%, Dell dropping 20% within 24 hours. So these are ancillary companies, kind of related in some sense. Microsoft getting questions on the earnings call about their spend. One of the analysts asked the Microsoft Satya, you guys are spending a lot of money. There's rumors of $100 billion data center. Are you seeing what's the ROI going to be like? So analysts are starting to ask questions. The same happened on the AMD earnings call as well. Bradford and Michael.
Yeah, we took a peek at Microsoft just to see what we're missing, and we definitely need to dig in more. But their earnings over the last year have only grown about 10%. So it's like they should be one of the bigger beneficiaries of OpenAI and the spend they're doing, but like it's not really showing up in their earnings. Now, possibly,
yeah,
it's with a monthly reoccurring thing where it's going to be delayed, and it's starting to happen, but it's just not happening in spades. But like I think the monetization Microsoft's going to get is going to be with companies that are early adopters and are willing to implement quickly, and it's going to take a while, I think, for the early majority.
Michael.
Yeah, just from a sentiment point of view, NVIDIA really is reminiscent of what Tesla was like in 2021.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's similarities, exactly. There's a short-term supply and demand mismatch causing high prices for these chips, GPUs, and high margins. NVIDIA, Jensen was very positive about the coming quarters, especially they're pulling back some Blackwell platform revenue into this year to kind of get up in front of that Osborne effect. H200 appears to have lots of demand still. So the next few quarters, they're going to do fine on revenues and margins still. But the question is really about 2026 and beyond. And, markets are starting to ask questions now. Let's see. Is there anything else we got to talk about? Lots of replies today. Lots of bears in the replies. What is going on, guys?
There's more bears out there than bulls.
Yeah.
Looks like
How
the
can there
Trump
be
case
more
just
bears?
returned a verdict.
Okay, what does it say?
Doesn't sound like that's actually news.
Michael?
Yeah, another topic that I can talk about is the inventories. If we're interested in that, the Model
Yeah,
Y
definitely.
inventory.
I mean, Michael, you've been spot on with the Model 3 production ramp. I'm sorry I doubted you. And we're seeing Troy raising his estimates and everything. But, the jury's out still. So we'll get the numbers when we get the numbers. But it looks like you're tracking in the right direction. So why don't you give us an update on production, deliveries by model in Q2, and inventories?
I don't have the by model in front of me right now, but I will say now Troy's latest update, I think, is actually he updated it well, but it might actually now be too high versus what I'm tracking. We'll see. But the inventories continue downward. Their Model Y inventory is down about 30, almost by a third, since the introduction of that of the financing deal, which is very significant considering there was significant Model Y production out of Fremont. But Austin did seem to cut down Model Y production a little bit this quarter. So doing a combination of cutting production a little bit in Austin, probably also rededicating some resources to Cybertruck ramp. Also, there was some layoffs, I believe, so that probably hit Austin production. But yeah, the inventories are coming down. But today they actually spiked up across all 4 models because Tesla posted a lot of demo vehicles, which come at a discount, a slight discount. But it is interesting, and I wonder why they would post the demo vehicles today. So that's a news item. Maybe Sawyer should tweet out. That was fresh from today.
You know, we have seen a Model Y launch in China with an updated dashboard and ambient lights. It doesn't have like the rear screen and all the stuff the new Model 3 has, but it's kind of like half the stuff. So I wonder if we could see something like that in the US too, and this is maybe helping out clear inventory ahead of that. If so, then it also kind of changes the cost calculation because then you have to think about the cost of having excess inventory that you have to discount versus just offering financing ahead of time and liquidating that inventory to a more desirable level.
Good, thank you. Michael, what is your total production and deliveries estimate for Q2?
My latest update, I was saying I think that they will be both around 435,000. I think that was my last update. Probably looking at a little bit lower because what I saw last week, there was less production than expected. So maybe like 430, 425, something like that. I haven't really run the numbers yet. But I think that they're really trying very hard to have deliveries higher than production in order to have a good cash flow figure. So they're doing two things to do that. You cut Model Y production in Austin slightly, as well as in China. It's an outgoing model. They want Juniper coming soon. And then on the other side of the coin, you offer financing deals. So I think Model Y is kind of stale. I think it's indicating Juniper is very close.
So you expect Juniper sooner than next year? This year?
Juniper this year, yeah, I think so.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Anything else? Elon tweeted and said there hasn't been a discussion of a cabinet position for him. Let me get the wording right here. There have not been any discussions of a role for me in a potential Trump presidency. Okay. All right, great. If there is no, okay, Michael. Michael, your connection is bad. All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to cut it short today. We don't have to fill the 2 hours, and these are supposed to be 1 hour anyway. So we're going to start on Patreon in about 5 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody.